We're back to talk about our top picks of the last eight laws from the 48 Laws of Power. The last eight laws we reviewed, which would encompass Law 18 through 25.
Yeah, they're all good.
They're all great.
What do you do?
It's a Monday, and we're going to talk about the laws. So, I'd like you to open up with it, if you don't mind. This was a very difficult. I narrowed it down to two, and I finally picked my top law. But what is your top law from 18 to 25?
Okay. It was really difficult. Really, really difficult because I like three here a lot. And the reason I like three of them is because I've actually seen it happen in my business career.
Right.
So one thing that is interesting to me, and it may be interesting to other folks out there, is that I started my first business. I opened my doors for the first time in 1986. And this book did not exist back then. Okay?
Yeah.
So this is like as I've read this book several times, it's a retrospect. Because I'm reading a law and I think to myself, hey, this law reminds me of this. And as I scrutinize the law, I see the law that happened before even the book was written.
Sure. Yeah, this has been going on forever.
Forever, right?
Yeah, Robert Greene's referencing stuff from the times of the Medicis and the kings, and so
You got it.
yeah.
So in that sense, it's really, really interesting to me. It's sort of like an affirmation of the book. Robert
Yeah.
Greene is a tremendous writer, one of my favorites,
Definitely.
And but yeah, it's interesting to me because he doesn't have to, you read the book and sometimes you read something and you're skeptical. But here,
So
many a time through the laws, I was able to trace it
Oh,
back.
for sure. Yeah. I mean, all of these. Well, anytime you're in a organization where there's power moves, I think all of these laws are applicable.
Right.
It's just, have you lived it yet? And you've been in the business world. You've seen a lot, so you've probably seen most of these laws play out.
It's amazing.
But you can only pick one today.
I
So
understand.
which one?
So
did you
the
pick?
one that, and the other thing that I want to say, one last thing, and I'm not, yeah. The most important law to me today is Law 25,
Okay.
to recreate yourself. But there was a time, because I saw this play out, okay, where choose your victim very carefully, Law 19. I saw in the company that
Careful who you offend, right?
careful who you offend,
Do not
because
offend the wrong person.
right, I saw somebody in the company that I worked with
Yeah.
for
Mhm.
that it's a Fortune 500 company still today. Somebody pass up for,
Promotion.
promotion,
Yeah.
and that person dedicated his life to make sure that he bothered very heavily the people that passed him up.
Mm.
And I was with that company for 23 years, and then my business was sold to a member of the family, so I was still involved, and it
Yeah.
kept on going. So
So you saw it, but it's not. That one's not your top
No.
right now. Your top is Law 25.
if you would have asked me 10 years ago, the top law for me would have been Law 19.
It's
But
interesting.
today, go ahead.
No, maybe it's because you've lived more. You see a different law. You chose recreate yourself as the most important law, because maybe back then, you're still growing and learning even today, but this Law 25 to you is the most important one.
Today, Law 25, to recreate yourself, and I'll tell you why. But Law 19, I saw it. I saw it happen before my eyes.
Yeah.
And I saw how it changed that person's life.
I'll tell you, Law 19 was my second pick as well.
Oh, really?
But it wasn't my first pick, and since we only can pick one
Right.
out of these 8 laws.
Okay.
But that was my second.
All right.
As well.
So
That's a very powerful one.
to be true to the podcast, Law 25 is my
we-
favorite
no,
today.
Yeah, we have to. But
Recreate
obviously,
yourself.
we've reviewed all these laws up till this 25. So whoever's listening can go back and listen to 19 if they want. Why is Law 25 the most important law out of the last 8 that we reviewed for you?
It's the most important because, I'm 64 years old, and I'm applying it to myself today, okay? And I want to continue to grow, and I want to continue to learn, okay? And if you don't recreate yourself, in my mind, I'm thinking that you fall into somewhat of a complacency, you know? And that's the beginning of the end. And so by recreating yourself constantly, I'm thinking you're like a chameleon, If you are in a green background, you turn green. If you're on dirt and it's a brown background, you turn brown. If you are,
You're constantly adapting.
You're constantly adapting. And by doing that, the only way to adapt is to continue to grow, to continue to learn, to continue to analyze things, to continue to bring new things into your life, not to be afraid of change. Being afraid of change is, I think, detrimental.
Which I think that you made a point to say you're 63 now.
64.
You're 64 now. The older, from what I've seen, the older you get, the more you resist change.
Correct.
Which is interesting. So this law is the most important one to you because you've mentioned it to me. You see some of your friends who don't want any change.
They're done.
But the problem with that, from my perspective, is the change is going to happen no matter what. It's whether you're on the boat or you're left stranded.
You got it.
So,
like, for example, artificial technology.
Artificial intelligence,
Intelligence.
AI.
I need to get into that. And
that one I'm fighting.
You're fighting. Okay, well, I propose to you that may be a mistake.
Yeah, I know it's a mistake.
It's a mistake.
I know
because I need to get into it because there are so many things that are going on with artificial intelligence that it's time for me to dive in, and I'm late already coming to the game.
Yeah. There's no way to completely avoid that. It's like I was talking to a buddy, our buddy Andrew, this weekend, and he was saying it's going to be the equivalent of an email or a phone number. It's required in our society. Who doesn't have a phone number now? So AI, if you don't get on that bandwagon, it's going to be the equivalent of not having an email or a phone number.
The thing that I'm seeing, I have to get into it. I've resisted it because, I want to be, I thought artificial intelligence is not really, not phony, but it's not really you because it's getting in there and doing work for you, so it's making it less. I believe in you do your work, you get your credit for your work, but it's doing some things that, I'm seeing some applications of it.
Yeah.
Even in the business world, that it's incredible. But
I think
recreating yourself, to me, that's the most important thing right now.
Yeah, I agree. And with AI, and then I'll share with you the law that I picked. But with AI, I asked our buddy, do you think that AI is making us dumber? Because we're not solving anymore the critical thinking, answering all those questions. And
what did he say?
He believes that yes.
So do I.
It's like a tool. First, you made a tool. The humans made a hammer. But now we've built robots that build hammers. We're not in the equation anymore.
Correct. And that's why I've been resisting it.
Yeah.
Because I
exercise the brain.
Yes.
Challenge the brain.
So if you look at the law that I picked today, recreate yourself, that law challenges not only you, your brain, your spirit, physically, you have to recreate yourself.
Constantly.
Constantly. And I remember one time, so for example, in 1986, I opened the doors to my insurance business, okay? And I'm in the insurance business till today, okay? I manage it. I have an office manager, I have staff, and so, I I managed the business, okay? But I remember that all along, or shortly thereafter, I started investing in real estate. And at one point, I wanted to make the switch, right? From insurance to real estate. And I never did.
Mm.
And one of the reasons was that I would sit with one or two or three people that were extremely successful, and I would share my thought, and all three of them, different people at different times in my life, said, "Oh, you shouldn't do that." Because you've been in the business of insurance so long that everybody that thinks of Pablo Gomez, thinks of automatically insurance. They don't think real estate. And you are going to destroy that, what you have created. And
Looking back, do you think that was good advice?
looking back, no, I don't think it was good advice. But see, it took me a while, even to today, even to today.
So,
And that's part of recreating yourself.
so,
But those advice from these people that I held in high esteem
they
because
were
of their business held me back.
you think it's bad? It was bad advice.
Today I do.
Okay.
Back then I didn't.
Well, it's interesting. So I'll share with you my top pick.
Okay, please. I'm very interested because it sounds like you didn't pick
Because-
25.
No, I didn't pick 25. And what I was going to say is I think it has to do with the stage in our lives. You are 64, I'm 33. For
Jeez.
me, the most important law is Law 23. Concentrate your forces. That's the most important law to me out of these 18 through 25. And, but I think that person was giving you advice, however long ago that was.
3 different people in 3 different occasions.
Maybe that advice was because you're in a different position now than you were then. Maybe you were still growing. And I think that for me, as I'm still growing, we're in different situations, different positions.
You're still building.
I'm still building. And so for me, concentrating my forces is the most effective way to build. And so, I was thinking about the saying, en la unión está la fuerza.
Right.
Which is in the strength is in the unity.
Right.
And so, for me, when I was 27 years old, I decided to sell a property that I owned, as you know, a rental property that I felt was actually weighing me down because I was in the financial services world, I was in it, but not fully. And then I had this property which was giving me a little bit of passive income, and I was very comfortable. And the property had some issues, as you know, and I had to tend to it, and it was a distraction. And
Well,
Robert
you were,
Greene,
just to make it clear to the viewers,
Yes.
you were also managing your
I was
property.
also managing. That's a great point.
You were managing your property,
That's a great
and you
point.
had a full-time business that was taking off.
That was correct. So for me, managing that property was another job, and it was a distraction. Hindsight, I could have had somebody manage it. That's a great point. But in my mind, I thought the only way to actually grow in the financial services world in my own business was to get rid of that distraction, because I was making a lot more money in the financial world than the rent that was coming in there. So I said, why am I wasting my time? And so I sold the property, as you know, when I was 27. Within 2 years, I had doubled my income in the financial services world, because I felt that I didn't have that over my head anymore. One of the things I thought was it had to do with comfort, because I have money coming in steady. But I think the reality is, that might be a piece of it. The reality is it was a distraction. And my forces were not concentrated on one goal, one task, which was to grow my business, which was a baby. And you have to tend to that baby, and as you know, in the businesses you've grown. So for me, Law 23 is the most important law of these last 8 laws. And I really like that quote that Robert Greene says, where he says, in the long run, the master serves the slave. because
Wow.
at first you're the slave to the master who's, let's say in my case it was the people that were sending me business. They were referring me, and I had to perform for them. The moment I stopped performing, they cut the referrals off, right? But eventually they become dependent on you. And that's what Robert Greene talks about in Law 23, is that the more he uses, the Medici family, right? That they became dependent on Galileo. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
As the artist to do all the commissions for them. First, Galileo was the slave to their requests, but then they needed Galileo. And he was able to charge whatever he needed to charge, and he was in control. So I really like that.
Brutal, isn't it?
Yeah. And then there's so many examples of situations where, people spread themselves too thin, which we've talked a lot about. And, even in a situation of like homeostasis, health, when you're spread too thin, you're not getting good sleep, you're not getting good food, nutrition, your immune system drops. You are more likely to get sickly and sick. And that's, I think, another example of when you're not concentrating your forces of taking care of your body, you're going to see the signs, which many times I've just ignored. But the signs are there.
Very interesting.
So yeah, for me, that was the most powerful. And the last thing I want to throw in was that there is a risk. There is a risk, and I like that Robert Greene points that out, to concentrating your forces. And one of the risks is that one day the master will not be there and you'll be alone. I think he calls it the law of diffusion. But one day you will be alone, and the person that you were focusing all your attention on, like Galileo and the Medicis, for example, will not be there. And you're going to have to find yourself a new person to focus and concentrate your energy on. And that can happen. The last thing on this law, which I think is extremely important, which has served me, and I'm constantly working on this, is find out who the actual decision maker is. Because, and he lists Louis the 13th as an example, that
Okay.
The mom was actually the one that person needed to win graces with. I don't remember who it was at the moment that needed to win graces, but it wasn't Louis the 13th. It wasn't the king. It was his mother. So they found that out, and they were able to move up within the ranks. And in business, I saw it many, many times where I would be trying to make a sale, and I would be talking to the business owner, and I didn't need to be talking to the business owner. I needed to be talking to their number one guy, which was the right hand, who actually made the decisions.
Got it.
Or sometimes I'd be talking to the husband, and I didn't need to be talking to the husband. I needed to focus my attention to the wife, who actually made the financial decisions in the house. So anyways, I think that's really important to actually know, because when you're concentrating your forces, you might be concentrating on the wrong person or goal. It's something else.
Yeah, you need the so-called decision maker, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the one that actually carries the weight of making the decisions.
Very interesting.
So that's my top law. I really think that one of the last 8 we reviewed, by recreating yourself, I can't disagree with you that that's extremely important.
To me, it is, because I feel that by doing that, it's going to keep me in the game, intensely enthralled in it.
Absolutely.
Because by recreating yourself, and you have to read, you have to study, you have to learn new things, because to Grant Cardone, he says it a lot. He says, I'm constantly learning and evolving, but is within more or less the same family of business. Like, he's not recreating himself by becoming a pianist or doing
all
something totally different.
they all somehow are
feed each other.
connected.
Yeah,
Yes.
they feed each other. He's
So a real estate company, a management, property management, what another
mortgage company.
yeah,
Uh,
escrow,
yeah,
whatever.
yeah. They all somewhat feed each other. So
I think that's smart.
I think so, because recreating yourself, you have to be very, very careful, because I'm not saying, go out there and become a plumber, although plumbers, my plumber makes good money, super good money. I'm not saying go and become a welder, although the people that, but what I'm saying is you recreate yourself, and I'm thinking within a sphere, right? However, if there's a lot of people, like when I was in my 40s, I was privy to a lot of people that were, especially around 2007, 2008, 2006, the economy got hit.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of people unemployed. And I remember talking to people that were architects and
Oh yeah.
engineers, and they were trying to go into totally different
Insurance,
careers.
mortgages. Yeah.
Yeah, they wanted to go jump into the business world, become insurance agents, becomes real estate agents,
Yep.
become this, because they saw that there was a lot more money here. And that's a
Huge.
career change.
Yeah.
You're recreating yourself, no doubt about it, but that's a full career change, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be careful. I'm not saying that that was wrong. People have to do whatever they have to do in order to put food on the table.
Right.
In fact, I knew a guy that I know him till today, although I haven't talked to him in quite a while, a year or maybe a little longer. But he was an engineer, and he got let go, and all of a sudden he had no income.
Wow.
He went out and started cutting grasses, mowing lawns.
Oh wow.
In the neighborhood, and he started doing it to such a good degree that he ended up hiring people, and he ended up opening a landscaping company. And I think he became very successful with that.
Wow.
So he went from being a full-time engineer,
Yeah.
let go. I remember talking to him, this is a long time ago, but I remember him telling me he had like 24 resumes out, and nobody called him.
That's an interesting point because he was forced to recreate himself.
That's correct.
And we know a good friend of ours that owns a restaurant who's an engineer. But he has an extremely successful restaurant.
That's right.
Forced to recreate himself. Started washing dishes, and you've been forced to recreate yourself in different times in your life.
Yes.
So sometimes Law 25 applies by choice, like you're doing it, you're choosing, but other things are being forced.
Well, we just had I'm sorry, go ahead, finish your thought.
Whether it's like the industry changing, whether it's a layoff of a company. But I did want to throw in that to your point on Law 25, recreating yourself, Robert Greene talks about, he didn't write the 48 Laws of Power until he was in his 30s. I think he was like 37 years old.
Okay.
30-something years old.
Yeah, I think late 30s.
Yeah, because it was written, I believe, in the late 90s.
Okay.
He had been doing so many different jobs, and he hadn't landed the right thing. He was trying to he knew he says that he knew that he had something that he could provide to the world, something different, but it hadn't come to fruition in his life yet. So I don't know if he was sharing with his mom. He lived a very normal he says middle what's it called,
middle class,
good life, good neighborhood, but he had this thing where he wanted to travel and see different things, and it's almost like he knew as an author maybe he would need to collect all these stories and experiences. But it wasn't until his 30s, late 30s, I'll make sure that I get the exact age, but I think it was late 30s when he wrote the 48 Laws of Power, and he kept recreating himself and getting these weird jobs until one guy one day came up to him, and he was working in I think it was a port city or something in Europe, I believe, and the guy told him, "Hey, I'm gonna write a book," um, and he asked him something along the lines of like, do you have any ideas or this and that? And then Robert Greene shared with him a little bit of what he had experienced. He had been fired, this, that, by outshining a master. And he says, even though we're not in those times of Genghis Khan and all this stuff, we're still living these laws out. And the guy says, that's a book. He's like, would you write the book with me? And that's how it happened.
Yeah, I think the gentleman was a publisher.
Okay.
I think.
When did
But
Robert
it's
Greene...
very interesting that you say that because, for example, we just had a podcast on the real estate industry where, there's a lawsuit in place for commissions that on the buyer side.
Yep.
Okay. So if that's not trying to recreate yourself, and that's a force from outside, that's an external force because that's something that's happening in the industry, and everybody that's in the industry is going to be affected by it. This is the real estate industry. So that lawsuit has the capability of monumental changes and changing the entire landscape, right? We're in that field too. We're going to have to recreate ourselves also.
By force.
By force. Because that's already, in fact, today's Monday the 16th. Today is one of the court dates.
Okay, so in there, Law 25 and Law 23 apply. You have to recreate yourself, and the risk of concentrating your forces in one industry.
Oh.
The master will not be there. You'll be alone. You'll be forced to apply Law 25 and recreate yourself. Right?
Yeah. But I love that phrase. In the long run, the master serves the slave. Wow.
Yes. By the way, I looked it up. The 48 Laws of Power. Robert Greene was born in 1959. He's 64 years old.
Just like me. Wow.
And the 48 Laws of Power was written, here it says 1998. So,
you were right.
So wow. He was almost 60. What is that, like 38 years old?
Yeah.
37, 38. New
Very
York Times
good.
bestseller. So yeah, look at, I mean, because I think about that sometimes, right? Because as I'm concentrating my forces and trying to build, and I think I'm 33 years old, and a lot of times we do this, whether we're in our 20s or 30s, we're always thinking we should be at a certain place in our lives. I've looked at myself and I said, I wanted to be here by now. I wanted to be here. And but it's interesting to hear Robert Greene's story that, at the age of 37 he writes this book, but everything he did up till then you could say was
building up to it.
Building up to it, yeah.
It's very interesting.
So.
And it's interesting because look, we're showing the difference in our ages, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there's a lot to be said about when you're reading this book,
right,
and you're going through the laws. If you're 20 years younger than another guy that's 30 years older, that book is going to impact you completely differently because of the stage in which you are at the moment that you read it.
Correct.
And so,
yep.
To me, what's extremely interesting is that these laws are in play. Nobody needs to, prove it to me, because prior to the book being written, I was seeing some of these laws being applied.
Right. In
the business world.
It's
and they're
great.
Brutal. And
like the theory is, let's say, the book, but you've seen it in play in real life.
I have many of them. It's really interesting. Like, for example, this gentleman that was passed over for a promotion, he devoted his life to be a thorn in that company.
Sure.
And he was in management. So he created several issues. And they knew that the people that, and it's known. And then you got like little cliques and... Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting to see it play out, actually.
Yeah, I think that I feel blessed that I experienced some of these laws in real life because you can, protect yourself from that happening again. I've also been fortunate that I've been able to come to you in certain situations, and ask for, consigliere
Mm-hmm.
advice
Mm-hmm.
in certain situations. So that's helped me to maneuver in some of these power dynamics, you could say. But uh, there are still some laws I haven't experienced that you have experienced, and I think that's why it's really cool to have this exchange of ideas, because there may be some people out there that haven't seen the Machiavellian
Aspect of
side
it, yeah.
of the world, of corporations, of people within a corporation. Not all. We're not saying all corporations are bad. We're not saying all of our people are Machiavellian, but these games are played.
Oh, yeah.
These laws do exist and apply.
Yeah, to climb the corporate structure, even if the corporation has a benevolent output. I don't know,
Yes.
they're making the best protein bars in the world, okay? But as they become, $1 billion company,
Right.
you've got these struggles within the company. Their output is beneficial, right? They're making the best protein bars in the world, but as they become $1 billion company, you've got these people within the structure fighting for, a bigger piece of the pie internally.
Correct. And I think at the end of the day, it does reflect on the product too. I personally believe, like, I've seen, like, there was this one company, you guys can look it up, Tom's of Maine, which
Mm-hmm.
was a really good company. Apparently, the product, I'm not recommending it or anything, but apparently it was really good ingredients, I guess you can say, for their soaps and toothpaste and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get bought out by a Colgate. Colgate, that's not necessarily what. So do they keep that Tom's of Maine line and good quality and all those things, or does Colgate now bring in
Change the product.
the dyes and change the
Oh,
product and cut here and cut there, and then you feel the quality of the product de- decrease, right? The quality. But another thing is that Robert Greene says use this as a shield. Study the laws and have it as a shield. Know that people will apply these laws towards you. So you have to understand them. If you don't necessarily, he's not saying go out there and put these laws
into
into
effect.
effect. However, he is saying, well,
Be
hey,
aware of them.
be aware of them, and you can use them. Sometimes, I really thought it was powerful how in the laws of human nature he talks a lot about psychology and body language, and how he talks about the smile, a genuine smile versus the smirk, right? The genuine smile, you have wrinkles across the eyes.
Whoa.
And so you gotta keep an eye out for that and know that that exists, and people are fake sometimes in certain settings. Anyways, anything else you want to throw in? I think that you
Yeah,
picked a solid one.
body language is so important. You can give away so much information based on your body language. I was watching a movie the other day, and there was an interaction that I ended up rewinding and watching it a second time.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and because um, they were talking, and what was coming out of the mouth was totally different than the perception that was being interpreted by the other person, and they were right. The body language never lies.
Mm.
So you're not totally aware of the massive amount of information that you are giving away by your body language.
Yeah.
It's tremendous. One last thing that I like to throw out there is I have always been a big proponent of pulling the trigger. Jump in,
Taking action.
taking action, take action. And nothing in life is perfect. So when I started my business, I knew nothing about nothing. Okay? I mean, that was a complete career change. I never knew that I was going to get into the insurance business. I was in the sciences, pre-medical student, all this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, everybody around me was shocked to see that I opened an insurance agency. okay? But I needed to make money. I wish I had a better, more noble idea. I got into the insurance business to make money so that I could go back into the sciences. And it never happened. I opened up and I stayed in the business world. By the time I tried to go back to the sciences, I felt it was too late. The sacrifice would have been intense for my family. I had kids. Anyway, so I'm a big proponent of taking action.
Yeah.
Okay? So I don't want to deter anyone, especially, I mean anyone, young, middle-aged, older, of taking action, of doing something that you feel that you want to do. Take action. Nothing's perfect. You don't have to know these laws to a T. The fact that you've been exposed to them already gives you an edge.
Right.
But take action. Because
Yeah.
somebody might hear this podcast and say, well, you know, they got started very young. What about me? Well, the best day to get started on anything is today.
Well, yeah, that's why I'm
If you haven't
pointing out.
started, start today.
I'm pointing out even the author didn't write this till 37 years old.
There you go. You're right.
So, yeah, I think.
And so many businesses are being created that take off, and sometimes you have a very young. There's a kid in Ecuador or Peru or something like that. I think he's 11 years old. He's created a bank.
Oh.
He started a bank.
Yeah, you showed me that.
Yeah, and I know he's far from being 18, but now he's actually got some very serious people depositing. In the beginning it was like, oh, look, he's a little kid created a bank, but no, he had a goal, and he knew what he was going after.
Yeah.
He had the determination and the drive of a full-fledged businessman at the age of 11, I think. So
some people start young.
And some people, I read about this lady that got her law degree when she was 84 years old. God bless them.
Yeah.
Because that enthusiasm and that resilience is what you need.
Yeah.
At whatever age you come to pull it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, go for it.
I don't think.
Go for it, guys.
I don't think we're saying at all that you have to be a certain age.
No, we're not.
I think that whenever you, let's say whenever you come across, for example, before the laws were written out, the 48 laws of power, you already were going through all these things, and you kind of had to learn it the hard way, let's say.
Oh yeah, I got hit over the head with a 2x4 many a time. Many a time.
But you survived. So, there wasn't a manual like there is now where you can actually see.
My God, if I
going
would have
on.
had this, I would have saved myself so much grief and suffering.
You can write your own 48 laws.
No, not really. But I've been, I don't know if it's just taken advantage of. Yeah.
Sure.
And you learn, though. You learn.
You learn.
People turn on you.
And even if you study these to a T,
Yeah.
you haven't seen it play out in real life sometimes, and it's still going to catch you off guard, and it's still going to, nobody's perfect. Nobody has these mastered down, I would say. I think that, and then, some contradict each other, some of the laws, right? So when do you apply that law? So, anyways, I think that no matter what, even if you study these, you haven't lived it in real life, and that's, I think, where you actually learn it. So it's good to know the theory or try and protect yourself and everything, but real life is different. You might not see it coming. It might be a family member. It might be a friend. It might be a co-worker that you've worked with for 20 years.
Yeah, Robert Greene would say, inevitably, just living, they'll pop up.
Yes, I agree. Anything else you want to throw in?
No, that's good.
Thank you.
Thank you.